back, and wow, the weather has changed. We had all that rain, all the grass was growing. I wanted to cut my grass, I couldn't, because just couldn't get the lawnmower out. The grass was just crazy wet. Anyway, temperature since then has dropped like crazy. We're getting, I'm right down south in between Southampton and Portsmouth, near the Isle of Wight, not far away from New Forest Coy. So I get quite good weather down south. However, we're getting quite a lot of frosts most morning, and it is cold. So yeah, I try and keep this as lively as possible. Won't be doing any warm-ups, but yeah, it is cold at the moment. So yeah, the temperature's been dropping down to, I don't know, minus 2 or 3 it got down to the other day. Outside, in here wasn't too bad. In here, I think when it was minus 3 outside, in here it was 3 degrees. So 6 degrees up on outside, and then the pond was sat at 10. So another 4 degrees up on that. So yeah, what's that? 13 degrees up on whatever it was outside, which is pretty good going really, considering I'm not heated. So you can tell these guys have slowed right down. They're just hovering. I think if I put some food in there, they probably would eat it, right? But just not going to do that at the moment. My auto feeder broke as well. So if you can see it there, that was the 20 quid auto cat biscuit feeder. I bought it off Amazon at the start of the season. It was like, I don't know, 20 quid. It was literally £22, and it was a cat biscuit auto feeder. It has worked a treat, absolute treat. So I'm not going to complain about it. I got a full season out of it for 20 quid. So I think I've done all right. That's a new one. That's a new 20 quid Amazon cat biscuit feeder. So I'm a sucker. Anyway, it broke, which was a good thing, because I think it probably broke because of the temperature. It got too cold, and the fish, you know, shouldn't be feeding. So well, not the fish, the filters. So I'm giving it all a break. They're not happy about it, but yeah. All right, they're looking really healthy though, it's just the main thing. A little tiny bit of cart pox I've spotted on a few of them, but again, all to be expected this time of the year, and nothing really to worry about. So I want to talk about, I don't want to talk about anything that's controversial, right? So I want to talk about a few things around koi and sicknesses. I'm going to talk briefly about salt and bit about sleeping sickness. So this is part 2 of sleeping sickness and salt. So there's definitely still some confusions out there around sleeping sickness, and whether it's a Japanese thing or it's a UK thing. And what I'd say to that is it's a koi thing, it's a global thing. So it doesn't make any difference where the fish is from. And I think what we'll do is we'll just talk about koi and their immune system. So if you think of a little tiny fry in its little grow bag, in its egg, it's fully exposed to the environment around it. And the egg itself, when it's laid by the mother, it's within that little yolk sac. It's got a few little bits in there. It's like a little starter kit, if you like. So there's a few antibodies in there. There's some antimicrobial proteins within the egg sac, and there's also some natural enzymes to help it fight germs as well. So they all help to protect the egg sac itself from things like bacteria, and it's like a tiny backpack protection for the koi whilst it's in that egg. Right, so when the fry actually hatch, they're still very reliant on those maternal protections, but not for long at all. So we're talking days. So those antibodies and proteins from that egg start to disappear pretty quickly, and at that point the fry are very much using their own immune system, so everything in the water becomes a threat. So poor water quality, sudden temperature changes, parasites, bacteria, even mild stress has an impact on those little tiny fry, and that's why at that point in their life is the most dangerous for them. Right, okay, so the next bit in this is that they do inherit something from their parents, but that is only genetic immune traits, so the potential for strong immunity. But here's the key point: they do not inherit immunity to diseases the parents have survived, and we'll come on to that in a bit because it leads on nicely to sleeping sickness. So every koi must build its own immune memory, so one challenge at a time. As baby koi, the fry, grow, they actually get their own immune system, which slowly switches on as they grow. And they've got an innate immunity, which is their basic defences that they're born with, so that being their spleen, their skin, the scales, and things like their mucus are all part of their innate immunity, so things that help them fight off any kind of issues regards to parasites, viruses, bacteria, that kind of stuff. And then they've got their adaptive immunity, which is stronger learned immunity that builds over time, but the adaptive immunity takes a lot longer to develop. So fry remain really vulnerable in their first few weeks of life and don't have, other than their innate immunity, which is what they're born with, the protections that they've got, they don't have any immunity to anything else. And that's really crucial when you think about the sleeping sickness virus. They won't have, no koi, no matter where they're from in the world, when they're born into a pond system, and that's usually always sterile, they don't have any immunity, so it needs to be built up over time. So I just wanted to make that point because it just emphasises that no koi, when it's born, would have had any immunity to sleeping sickness. When you think about the carpedema virus, or we're going to call it sleeping sickness, or I'm going to call it sleeping sickness, it's like a pox virus, or it's similar to a pox virus. So when you think of things like that we'd associate with pox, you'd think of things like chicken pox, right? It is very contagious. So it's something that we're completely able to fight off. But when we come up against it, usually as children, we're able to fight it off with our innate immune system, so the things that we're given from birth. And we don't usually have any problems with chicken pox, right? Just get scratchy itches, last for a couple of weeks, might feel a bit crappy. So it's very similar for the koi. However, it can be quite tough for them during that period. And you've got to think of the environment they're in. It can be quite stressful. And things like poor water quality, high nitrite, low oxygen, all those things aren't something that we would have to be worried about when we got, say, chicken pox, but koi do, so it's quite a stressful period for them, and they do need a little bit of help going through it. And I think with the right care and the right help, you shouldn't have any problems with going through sleeping sickness, but it's just being aware of what it is and then reacting to it. So obviously in part one we covered off what it looked like, and then really I need to talk to you about, probably in part three, how you can treat it best with salt. And I will do that. It's something I need to just tee up with regards to like salt meters and stuff like that. So I think it's just really important though, understanding that all koi potentially can get it, haven't got the immunity to it. So it's just about when they do get it, how we can support them as hobbyists. What do you do when you think you might have got it? So the first thing probably is you'll be buying a fish. Now, if you're buying a high-end fish from a high-end dealer, you're not going to need to worry about this. That fish would have been taken through all the right protocols, haven't got anything to worry about, so you could, you know, do your standard checks. I think it's still always worth putting the fish into a quarantine system, which is, you know, the best way to bring any fish into a new environment. In a quarantine system, you're able to have complete control over the situation. So you have got a potential naive fish, one that you've bought, you don't know its background, and then you can introduce one of your fish to that fish and see what happens and control what happens. Now, it might be that your fish didn't have it, had it, you just don't know. So it could be that your fish are naive or the fish you bought is naive. So it's really kind of a test and learn. You could, if you've got the relationship, you could ask your dealer or breeder or the person you bought it from if they believe they might have already had sleeping sickness. But there is 3 different genotypes of sleeping sickness. So it's probably worth just making sure you go through the right processes yourself before putting them into your main setup. So quarantining would always be the best way to go. And in a quarantine system, you're able to adjust the temperature. If I put freezing cold, if I put something in here at the moment, it's unheated down at 10 degrees, I wouldn't be able to actually treat a fish with sleeping sickness correctly. You need to take the temperature up to, you know, 24 degrees around that point, 22 to 26, to actually help bring its immune system up. And then the salt helps to support its osmosis or its osmotic system, and also relieve stress, help it breathe, all those good things. So I think it's probably worth just touching on. So because the sleeping sickness virus attacks the gills, or certainly that's one of the places that it attacks, it causes quite a lot of damage in, or can cause quite a lot of damage in the gills, certainly where it replicates as a virus. So it's definitely a breathing respiratory thing. So you need to bring the air up, or the oxygen level up in your pond. And again, if you're bringing the temperature up, you also need to make sure you've got sufficient air in there, with obviously air not particularly being harder to dissolve as the temperature is raising. What else is there? So yeah, it's really important that you're just aware of it and you've got the right setup in place to make sure you can adjust to it, I think. So if you think about the way in which sleeping sickness is transferred, they class it as horizontal, so that is direct contact or shared water. So if you put a naive fish with an exposed fish, over time or quickly, depending on water temperature, they will get those symptoms, and the symptoms can vary, but the most obvious ones are in the previous video, where the fish are not only just lethargic but look like they're actually asleep. And I think if you look carefully on that previous video, you can actually see, and I think it's quite strange, and they'll class it as like a coma, or it can put the fish into a coma. And my fish weren't in a coma, but if you look back on that video, you can actually see the fish stop breathing, hold their breath, and they start to fall down. Is that a good demonstration of a fish holding its breath? Anyway, that's what they do, and then you can actually see that fish dropping down, and then all of a sudden wakes up, and then it starts swimming again. It's very odd. It is, I wouldn't class it as a coma. It's almost like they're just falling asleep. When I get really tired, I would do that. It's like that. It just doze off, and then they just sink and they stop breathing. You can actually see it in the video. It's very strange. So lethargicness, sleepiness, either on the bottom of the pond or on the surface. You know, this isn't to be mixed up with other problems like swim bladder issues or something. This is probably where you've just introduced a new fish. So it's like a reaction. It's a reaction to something that you've done and you should be aware of, right? So this isn't something else. If you've had a pond for 10 years and then one of your fish starts doing that, it's not sleeping sickness, it's something else. So this is a reaction to something that you've created or done. Mine happened within 2 days. So it is temperature dependent. and it can be longer, but 2 to 3 days after putting a new fish in, or a naive fish with one that you know that had it, you would start to think you're going to see something, so you just need to keep your eye on it. Yeah, it does cause quite a lot of issues, not just with the gills but with the body as well, and then you get that osmoregulation or osmotic issue where the fish isn't able to control the osmosis, so the water trying to take the salt from its body, and that's why you put the salt in there, to actually support that and actually bring the salt up in the water, not to the same level as the salt in the fish's body, but to a level where it feels more comfortable and less stressed, and the water's not taking, or it doesn't feel like it's fighting against the water taking all of its salt all the time. It allows it just to relax a bit. If you think of the amount of energy they use extracting salt from the water, it just helps the whole process. So what I noticed straight away is, more than anything, was I've got a little auto feeder on my quarantine system. The food was just at the bottom of the quarantine system. They hadn't eaten the food, which was completely out of character. So I thought straight away there's some issue here. Why aren't they eating the food? So I checked the auto feeder. It's nothing to do with the auto feeder at all. They go right off their food. So the first thing you'll notice is they're not eating. They won't eat anything at all. Not even the best snack in the world. They just won't eat anything. Then you'll start to see your water go a bit cloudy. It starts smelling really bad because they're kicking out loads of ammonia. You might see those things before you see anything else regards to the sleepiness. So they're really important to look out for as well in that whole quarantine process. And then what else would you expect to see? So I think they've gone off their food, the water's starting to smell, you then start to see the sleepiness. Straight away you know you've got a problem there, and that's when you'd start to put your salt in. And you'd take your salt up to around 0.5 would be enough to start to actually support the fish in that process. So 0.5% salt in your water, and then you would try to maintain 0.5. I did it for 2 weeks and then tried to take the level down, and actually noticed that some of them started to actually go a bit sleepy again. So it's going to be different for everybody, right? And depending on what sort of fish it is, whether it's what sort of variety of fish it is, some are more effective than others. Some won't be affected very much at all, like your chagoys or karashigoys or sluggies, whereas like a ghost sankey fish would probably get hit a little bit harder. So everything's going to be unique to you, and you just need to be able to react to it. So 0.5 would be a good place for your salt. And then just watch and just make sure, and hopefully, as I haven't had any issues, and I've been able to just maintain the salt at 0.5 for a period of time. 3 weeks it actually was. I tried to stop at 2, but it ended up being 3 weeks. And now with water changes, it's just coming out. And I think the really important thing is a salt meter. So the next video I'm going to do, because it's getting pretty dark in here at the moment, it's dark outside now, and this camera's just really good at picking up light, but it is pretty dark and it's getting really cold. I'm still getting the cold air coming through, so I think I'll call it there, and then we'll come back to part 3 of sleeping sickness and salt, when I can talk through salt meters and show you how to look at the amount of salt you need to put in, because you'd be surprised how much it is. And then obviously you need a salt meter to make sure that you're keeping the pond at the same percentage, because again, you want to keep things consistent. Everything's got to be good. And because the water and the fish, so the fish is kicking out way more ammonia and the water's just looking horrible, just cloudy and just stinks, you're doing way more water changes than you would do, probably more than you do with new pond syndrome. So each time you do a water change, you'd be really surprised actually about how much salt you actually take out, and you can see it on the salt meter. I was really surprised, because a lot of people told me that you struggle to get it out, and I think over time it might linger a little bit, because it's, you're taking it down in small stages. But I think when you're going through the water changes, the big water changes to start with, you're taking out quite a big percentage. So you're constantly topping up, and you need the salt meter to see where you're topping up to, so you're not over, I would say medicate, you're not increasing the salt to a dangerous level, because you really wouldn't want to go up past 0.6 or 0.75 in some cases. And you wouldn't really want to go past that. And I think you're in danger of doing that if you don't check the salt as you go along. So it's not just a simple case of just thinking, right, they've got sleeping sickness, I'm going to bung 0.5% of salt in my pond and that's fine. You have to keep topping it up. So we'll talk about that next, because I think that needs a little bit more explanation. But hopefully that's just helps you to understand that sleeping sickness has the potential to impact anybody and everybody. If you're buying new small fish and they haven't been taken through the quarantine process correctly, which, to be fair, is not very common, I don't think. But if you're buying small tozai directly from somewhere, or fry, then it's probably more likely to impact you. If you buy an older fish, like I say, that are high-end, more expensive, and coming through a well-known reputable dealer, shouldn't really have a problem at all, really. So I'll leave it there, and then we'll pick up again on part 3. Thanks.